Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. For more analysis of the presidential directive to the Central Bank of Nigeria on embargo on facilities for the import of food items, we're now being joined by Rotimi Fakayejo, a stockbroker and an economic affairs analyst. Rotimi, good to have you on the morning show.
Pleasure.
You're welcome.
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, the directive by the president that food imports should stop is generating a lot of concern. On one hand, you have those who say that a political authority should not give directives to the CBN because the CBN, the central bank, is supposed to be autonomous, independent. And then there are those who say, well, in principle, the directive is in order if the idea is to encourage agricultural production in Nigeria and ensure, a greater food supply. But that at the same time, the president has not identified those food items that will need to be added to the 43 that are already on the list of items restricted from access to foreign exchange. So what's your take? Do you think this is good? Do you think the bigger issue is about autonomy of the CBN?
Well, I think most important thing we need to first look at is there needs to be an alignment between the fiscal and monetary policy. Then secondly, we've seen, at least in the last 3-4 years, that the CBN has delved very deep into the foray of agricultural support and other sectors of the economy. So for anyone to now say that it is wrong for the political authority to dictate to the CBN, I don't really think that may be fair and correct. Because for some of the policies that have evolved from CBN, actually revolves around the mindset of what the presidency or the incumbent government wants. So on that side, I don't really think it might be correct to condemn that act that political authority cannot issue such instruction to the CBN. Then secondly, the ambiguity in that directive. Is it raw, on processed foods? Is it processed foods that the government has placed such strict ban on that should not have access to foreign exchange? Then, thirdly, I believe also that the government is also confusing potential with reality. We may have the potential to produce the food that we need to eat in Nigeria, but that capacity has not yet been developed.
So are you disagreeing with the president's rationale that having achieved food security, Nigeria should now use our foreign exchange reserves towards diversifying the economy? So you're saying that we have not achieved food security as he claims? We
have not. We are tending towards it. We're on the path to that, but we have not. Because, take it from me, I remember vividly in the days when I was doing my youth service in Onitsha. You will never, or as at that time, I never found foreign or imported rice in the Nkpo market or the food market where people used to buy food items. You would never see it. I don't know if anybody remembers. What that implies is that we have the capacity to produce rice that we can consume in Nigeria. But the point is, over time, we lost that capacity, but the potential still remains. So now, as we have it presently, I don't think we are producing sufficiently enough. Because go to different restaurants, go to different homes. What kind of rice are they eating? Yes, we have the locally produced rice, for instance, but are they what is being consumed? If we suddenly withdraw all of this from the system, does what we have presently, will it be sufficient enough for us to be able to sustain ourselves? So the government should look at it in 3 phases. First, potential, we have it. Capacity, we have not yet developed. Then sustainability is another thing that needs to be looked at. Do we have silos to actually store grains? Do we have them sufficiently dispersed all over the country? The answer is still no. Then also, the food belt of the country is like in a war zone. Many of the farmers have withdrawn their activities from the farms because of the fear of headsmen or one clash or one banditry or whatever. So we are not yet there. It's a very, very laudable directive, but the timing and the timeline is definitely inappropriate for now.
The timeline seems to be a problem. It's clear that there are pros and cons to this banning of forex for the importation of food items. And one of the cons that seems to worry a lot of people, of course, is that with this banning will come an increase in inflation. How bad of inflation do you think we can expect, if any at all? And how do you think this is really going to play out on the economy?
Well, one way I want to look at it is, if you take a look at the items banned by the CBN from access to forex, the question I want to ask is, do we still have these items on shelves in the supermarket or in the marketplace? The answer is yes. Those items have not disappeared. The consumers are still consuming. And the point is that as long as those items are still very much held with us, and we have denied them direct access to forex, they will get forex by every means. So even the Nigeria that we know, the ones that are actually meant to be used for those ones permitted by the CBN, will find its way back to the other side. And definitely the competitiveness for forex will still be very much available. So the point is, the impact of this is definitely far-reaching in the short run. But if we can be consistent with what we are doing, then definitely we're going to have it much better in the long run. And at the same time, the nationalistic sensibility of Nigerians is very, very low. Many of us are not nationalistic in our approach. And I want to just give an example of Japan. When Japan started industrialization, they first brought in items from US. They started imitating those products. The products were substandard. The products were not, could not be compared with what is obtainable from the US market. But the nationalistic sensibility of Japanese made them to stick with those ones, even as they were substandard. And over the years, because they were patronizing those products, at the end of the day, they developed those products and they could meet international quality standard. And what that implies is that our rice, if we have been consuming, at least if 7 out of 10 Nigerians have been consuming the locally produced rice, I believe there will have been more production and there will have been more quality in their products. So the inflation side, it may not really be well pronounced for now, but definitely it's going to be here and there. But if the government is consistent in this directive, then definitely we're going to have it much better.
Just a comment on this food security thing. I mean, the government gives the impression that if there is a food supply, then there is food security. But we have food inflation, according to the Bureau of Statistics, right? Because food security is about the average Nigerian having access to quality food, affordable food. And we know that many Nigerians don't even have that access to 3 proper meals per day. So their definition of food security seems inadequate. But I want to take you back to the point you made earlier about the right of the political authority to give directives to the CBN, and you disagree with those insisting on the autonomy of the CBN. Now, you'll recall that in 2015, it was when the presidency took over forex management, and the presidency gave directives to CBN about how to manage forex. That led to one of the factors that led to the recession that we went through, because it caused a lot of disruption within the economy. And then, I mean, when you say, okay, protectionism, there's no problem with it, won't it put pressure on the parallel market? And you alluded to it when you said people will just, anyway, bring in the food items anyway, since it's not the food items that have been banned. But what do you think the CBN should have done in this matter? Did the CBN respond too hastily? Is the CBN too eager to please? Because what I've seen in the papers is the CBN saying, oh, yes, they will carry out the directive and that they will do it in phases. Shouldn't the CBN, shouldn't it have taken time to reflect a little more on this and provide information and even perhaps a justification? It just was jumping like, it's an arm of the presidency that that the president can just direct on issues of monetary policy.
Well, I want to believe that if there is alignment and synergy between the fiscal and monetary side, I believe there will have been collaborations before now. Although, ordinarily, the last pronouncement concerning items that were banned from access to foreign exchange came from the CBN. This one is coming from the federal government. I believe there should have been consistency for this also to have come from CBN. But at the same time, I'm of the opinion that there will have been enough collaboration between the CBN and the federal government before this directive is coming out from
we don't have a fiscal team in place on the other side.
We don't have a Minister of Finance.
Yes.
Well, I want to believe also it's not just an overnight thought. We should also remember that this is a government that succeeded itself. So we've had it since 2015, and it just got sworn in May. So invariably, the thought might have been there. The time of implementation is what may not really is what we may be facing right now.
We're about to go to a break, but I just want to ask you before we take the break, then you can give us your answer afterwards. The CBN governor rolled out his 5-year plan, and there was no mention of this, so it does not appear that that thought was there. That is quite a long-term plan. It was quite a detailed plan, you will recall. There was no mention of this. I also want to ask you what you think of the AMCON amendment bill that the president has signed into law, and the perception that that also will undermine that body, AMCON. Because now, I'm not sure if you're aware, the new chairman of AMCON is to be one of the 4 deputy governors of CBN, which is also perceived as a weakening of the institutions. But we're going to just take a short break now, and we'll be back with Rotimi Fakayejo. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still with Rotimi Fakayejo, a stockbroker and economic affairs analyst. So before I went on the break, still on the topic of weak institutions vis-a-vis strong, because this is really what we're discussing, when a president can give directives to the CBN, and as Dr. Abati said, the CBN is appearing to take unduly haste to implement these decisions. The CBN is guaranteed independence in its Establishing and Enabling Act to carry out its mandate. And now we see the AMCON amendment bill that's been signed into law now, with one of the deputy governors of CBN to become AMCON's chairman. What's your comment on that?
Well, I think we should always take things in detail and from the onset. One thing we need to know is, after the market meltdown, the AMCON was actually midwifed by the CBN. And various bodies have representative on the board of AMCON, various institutions, including the CBN. And if, for now, if it is felt that for what we have experienced over the years, because in true sense, AMCON has gotten more than what they thought was on ground. And they have not really been able to tackle much of the problems. So, and if they felt now that for better effectiveness of that body called AMCON, that it is better we are on top of it, then definitely it may not really be an outright condemnation for what that amendment had done to AMCON Act.
Interesting. You spoke about, before we went on a break, you also spoke about the potential versus reality, and you seem quite optimistic about our capabilities following this new directive. However, what's interesting as well is that if we look at the Standard Organization of Nigeria and NAFDAC, which are 2 institutions, organizations that are going to play a role in this new directive, a lot of people worry about the standards procedure, which is also why a lot of people depend on imported food products. Now, how do you think, or what do you think needs to be done in this regard to ensure that they are also taking on and playing their role on their side of things so that we can actually play this situation out as it nicely looks right now?
the Nigerian space is loaded with a lot of inconsistencies and irregularities. And we see that all the time in most of our institutions. You see a situation whereby SON of NAFDAC will go to the marketplace to start fighting quality of products. The question is, for some products that are imported, how did they get in here at all? For those that are manufactured here, how did they pass the quality control test before they were allowed into the market? So the thing is the situation that we have right now is definitely not what it should be. For the food items that maybe will now strictly be must be produced in Nigeria, the timing is very wrong. All hands are not on deck, and I believe that is not actually ripe for full implementation. But be that as it may, SON that we know have not really been doing what they ought to do. So maybe if they are short of personnel, they are short of equipment, they are short of technology, they are short of whatever training, I think a lot of things need to be addressed with respect to SON and even NAFDAC. But as that will be, as I said earlier, all these things have really to be. There is no synergy in government institutions in Nigeria. That is just the bottom line. No synergy. For us to get things right, there must be synergy. And there must be consistency.
Quite right. But let me take us back again to this whole argument about food security and agriculture. I mean, the president says we have food security. Again, if you look at the global report on food crisis for 2019, recently released by the FAO, the position there is that Nigeria is one of the top 10 countries in the world facing food crisis. And the report also says over 72 million Nigerians are malnourished. And that was why I raised the point earlier on about access to affordable food. Now, I think Obi Ezekwesili, one of those who had criticized the position of the president, also said, if you look at the World Hunger Index, I mean, Nigeria, has not achieved any form of a food security, which is also is consistent with the report on food crisis globally. Now, government is talking about agriculture, and they say they've achieved a lot with the growing of rice in Nigeria. But predominantly, what we still have in the country is subsistence farming. I don't see a lot of mechanized farming. Most of the Nigerians who are producing food, they don't have access to a value chain. They don't have access to mechanized farming. Yes, CBN is doing the Anchors Borrowers Program, but what percentage of Nigerians have benefited from it? What, in your opinion, should government do to achieve this, food security, or to make agriculture much more prosperous, much more productive, either in terms of food supply or in terms of the value chain?
Well, I think what we read mostly are things written. But the things written, are they actually the reality? That is a very big question. Now, for us to be able to sustain ourselves agriculturally, Nigeria has never been known. I think there used to be a time that we used to have, there used to be this body that will provide farm implements. I think it was in partnership with Japan at that time, maybe in the early 80s, whereby the farm implements will be available. Then if you want to, whatever you want to do on your farm, you can always access such. Maybe that is still available now, but not as pronounced as it was then. We need to really reset our focus on the way we want to approach farming. For mechanized farming, I think we have some level of that in the north. But we have extremely low level of such things happening in the southwest or in the southern part of the country. And I think for us to really be able to have some, food security and be able to achieve a lot, we need to re-engineer how we view food security and production. For instance, if by adventure, we have a situation whereby in the southwest, we produce yam. In the southeast, maybe the major farm produce is cassava and maybe oil palm. There should be a lot of focus or a lot of attention being paid to such areas that have advantage over others. And it shouldn't be all-round production from different places. And for me, I believe that we have a lot of arable farmland, but very, very little is being used. That is it's not really being cultivated as it ought to. Our focus should change from a lot of people getting involved in farming. If it's just about 5% or 10% of Nigerians that are actually engaged in mechanized farming, we have better results than the subsistence farming that we are having about more than 70% of Nigeria engaging in. So the food security issue, we need to go back to the drawing table and actually analyze what we actually want. But one thing we should also know is that we cannot produce all food items that we need to eat. Government should know that. So the outright ban of access to FX for food importation, I think, is challenged in that aspect.
Yeah, because in this country, we once had Green Revolution. We had Operation Feed the Nation.
Feed the Nation.
Yes, you know. But you are not recommending that. You are saying just 5% will do.
Yeah, 5 to 10% will go a long way for us. Because subsistence farming, you only do what you and your family will eat. But how does that help us? Because we should also go beyond the consumption of what we produce. We should also set our eyes on actually exporting what we produce. For instance, Malaysia, they came to pick, as it is known, they came to pick seedlings of oil palm from Nigeria. And today they are top producers. We can equally do the same thing. The aspect of agriculture that we are looking at right now is just food crops. How about the cash crops? If you go to Ondo State, the cocoa farms, almost all dead. The cocoa trees.
Well, Rotimi, we'll need to take a short break, and then we'll come back and we'll take you up on the next question. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Watching the morning show here on our Rice News channel. And stay with us in the studio is Rotimi Fakayejo, a stockbroker and economic affairs analyst who has been helping us to review the Nigerian president's directive that the CBN should restrict foreign exchange for certain food imports in Nigeria. And you were talking about getting the emphasis right, going back to the drawing table, and you were talking about cash crops, and you mentioned cocoa. But is the problem really one of ideas? I mentioned the fact that we had Operation Feed the Nation, we had Green Revolution, and only most recently, we had Dr. Akin Adesina, who was Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria 2011 to 2015. And he came to that position from the Food and Agriculture Organization. And he came up with a blueprint, and it was considered one of the most productive and efficient ministers of that period. And then all of a sudden, we're now still talking, around the circles and all of that. What exactly is the problem? Are we really serious about this diversification of the economy and this focus on agriculture?
The problem still lies also with consistency. If you look at governments transiting, when a particular government leaves, even the same party, we saw what happened when Obasanjo left and Yar'Adua came, then succeeded by Goodluck Jonathan, and then now. What Akin Adesina brought, everybody was seeing results. What we'll have expected is for that to have been built on and improved upon. But what is typical for Nigeria is that once a government leaves, everything leaves with him. So policies are based on the arrowhead of the government and not on established institutions. So for us to be starting from scratch, I mean, almost from scratch, abandoning what Akim Adesina was doing, I think is something that is generic in Nigerians. So, but we need to work on that in order for us to be able to have a good traction going forward. And I believe strongly that we can do better than what we are doing. Nigeria has the potential to even feed the whole of Africa. How much land mass does Israel have that they even export vegetables to Europe? So we have so much, but we don't know what to do with it. So like you promptly mentioned about issue of ideas, we don't know what those people who are close to the president are telling the president. The president can't know everything. In fact, he shouldn't even know everything. And that is why he has ministers, he has special advisors, he has head of MDAs and all of that. But what are they telling him? So the drought of ideas now, I believe, will lie with those who are close to the president and not actually the president himself. The president might have a mindset, I want to feed Nigerians, I don't want to import anything. But those that are close to him and say, okay, this is the route to go, these are the modalities to follow. And if you go it all headlong at once, we may not achieve our result. So let's cascade it down little by little and we get to where we're going. So the drought of ideas is actually with those that are close to government and not necessarily the president. Anybody can be president.
Hence the importance of strong institutions. But I take your point about synergy. So I want to relate it to this current policy. You made a brief allusion to the importation of rice. We know that there's a huge disparity between the statistics being bandied about and the reality on ground with regards to importation of rice. It's been smuggled. Bismarck Rewani coined this term, creating a smuggler's paradise. I find it quite evocative. How do we go about ensuring that that does not happen? In terms of your point about synergy between government institutions, what needs to happen to plug all those loopholes so that we do not create a smuggler's paradise? And still on synergy, what is the role of the Ministry of Agriculture in all of this?
The smugglers, creating a smuggler's paradise. For that, we need to be very, very truthful to ourselves. Our borders are very porous. I don't even think we have any border at all. I don't think so.
Fair enough.
Because everybody can walk in through anywhere, and nobody can be stopped. And like I said, that we
probably need to build a wall. Like the Mexican wall.
Actually, Kingsley Man also shared that view when I interviewed him. He said we may have to build a wall.
So to curb all of this, we have situations whereby the customs, they will go and stay at Ota or on your path to Lagos. And that's where they start arresting rice smugglers. They bump into shops and they cut out the rice. What work are they doing at the borders? So the thing is, there's so much complexity in managing the country called, or the nation called Nigeria. So much complexity. But the thing that we can do is, if each and every one of us, we are truthful to ourselves, if every one of us, we have the nation as the first focus, then definitely we won't have more difficulty in doing this. But how will Nigerians have such mindsets when they all believe that the government does not have them in mind? So it's a two-way thing. But as we have it right now, I believe that the food security issue, we are very far from it. I don't know whether you take time to drive through the slums, the slum area in Nigeria. If you go to, we may not even call that slum, inside Tokumbo, on the island, Freeman, all those places, you will see that, yes, Nigerians...
The slums you know are on the island.
Nigerians,
you don't know the ones
Nigerians
in our own part of town.
I'm even saying the one very close to us.
Okay. If I mention some slums for you, you'll be...
Nigerians are hungry. And it's not all those people that beg for, please, give me 15 naira or 100 naira, that are not actually interested in working. It's because there's nothing for some of them to do. So they say if you are smart, if you are hardworking, you'll be able to feed yourself in Lagos. It's correct. But how about somebody who has been in the bank and was laid off and now trying? Or somebody who has never even gotten an employment at all, hoping that one day he's going to wear a suit and tie and be able to work in a place. So the thing is, the hunger situation in Nigeria is very, very real. And if anything at all, I don't think there is an improvement yet. So we need to tell ourselves the truth. But this restriction, I think it needs to be given another shot so that we will be able to do the right thing and apply things that are normal at the right time.
The thing is, though, it's also going to open up opportunities for fintechs like Pate said that really and truly focus on providing forex to people, whereby you give your naira and then they give you a really reasonable exchange rate. So people are going to use that as an avenue still to access forex for items such as food, etc. How is that going to play out as well with exactly what the presidency is trying to achieve? Do you think it's going to have a positive effect, a negative effect? What is that going to add to the economy? Because that's definitely going to happen.
Well, the bill of full importation is very high. So if there is going to be an outright ban on access to forex, we should expect that it's going to put pressure on forex itself. So that will have its own implications. But one thing we shouldn't take our minds away from is that when you look at this holistically, it is actually a good intention. I'll give you an example. I was very impressed yesterday. We had a factory visit to international bureaus in Shagamu. And when we were leaving, when we were briefed by the plant manager and some of the directors, one point that I left with is that 100% of those working in that bureau are Nigerians. 100%. We didn't see any expatriates. Now, normally this is supposed to help us in two ways. One, to attract foreign direct investment, and two, to enhance employment within the system. But we need to do it right. And it cannot be a day's job. For you to come and set up another Cadbury industry in Nigeria now, it's not going to be in one day. It's not going to be in 6 months. It's neither even going to be in 1 year. So it's going to take process. So like NECA, I think that you were suggesting, National Employers Constitutive Association, that we should have a time line. 3 years down the line, this is what we want to do. Then you begin to achieve it stage by stage. And I think the CBN Anchor program, Anchor Borrowers program, I think should be further expanded more than what we are seeing presently.
Well, it's good you've mentioned NECA, but, because I was going to draw your attention to a story, one of the stories on the front page of This Day today. It says, stakeholders seek clarifications on forex ban for food imports. And the main argument here is that the Chamber of Commerce, the Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry and Mines and Agriculture, and also the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria and the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, they are saying that the federal government will need to clarify what categories of food imports are going to have this ban on access to forex, because they claim that certain food items are used as raw materials. And then two, just the point you made referring to NECA, that they should be put on notice, that it shouldn't be a sudden thing. When will it be implemented? Because these stakeholders are asking for time to prepare for this sudden policy shift. And if anything, what has been created is further uncertainty, which will affect employment, which will affect investment, which will also affect productivity within that, within the agricultural industry and also the food industry in Nigeria. What's your reaction to this position coming from the stakeholders?
Rightly mentioned, after maybe rice, the next food item that Nigerians consume more is bread. After rice is bread. Every home, virtually every day, they eat bread and they eat rice. Now, how much of flour do we produce in Nigeria? Or let me say, how much of wheat do we produce in Nigeria that later translate to flour, which will now give us our bread or other confectionery items? That alone is, you cannot, if you take it out, I believe we're going to cause further food crisis. So, like rightly mentioned, there needs to be specifications on what we attract this ban. I learned sometimes that there used to be importation of gari from one of the West African countries. And to me, I was shocked that why would such a thing like that be? Maybe that's one of the things that actually informed this decision. So they need to do a breakdown of what the implication, the nitty-gritty are, so that we're able to do the right thing. So that we may not even have much need for all of these debates by the time they come out with the modalities for the implementation of this. Exactly.
There wouldn't be the
exactly.
doubt.
So we may be too fast to condemn or to over-deliberate on this particular directive.
We're talking about priorities, which was the word you used earlier on. Some Nigerians will say, well, instead of banning the importation of food items, access, in terms of access to forex, shouldn't we worry more about the importation of petroleum products, which takes the bulk of foreign exchange?
Question.
Well, you have just about a few seconds.
2 seconds.
I think it's a yes or no.
I want to believe that is already taken care of.
We hope so.
We only have to endure a little while, maybe till about next year when the local refineries...
We hope so.
Thank you very much, Rotimi Fakayejo.